Welcome to Overcomers in Christ. I'm your host, Tim Dross. We have Pastor Lee with us and Fred GREETHAM. And welcome, everyone. Tonight we have a special show for you, or a special time. We have Fred with us, who is a big part of the Cleveland Browns, the announcing and talking about them. So, and Pastor Lee, it's a blessing to have him with us. So let's go ahead and get started. You want to go ahead and got some questions, Pastor Lee? Or
I do, Fred. Probably everybody's question is, who's going to be our quarterback?
You tell me, and we'll be the first to know. No, I think ultimately the way things, nobody really knows because they haven't really indicated or tipped their hand in free agency. I thought there would be rumors that they were in on or trying to get Malik Willis or going after Kyler Murray. None of that. Any of the sources I've talked with, the Browns really haven't been in on any of those. It could have been foregone conclusions, and they just decided not to even enter into that. But the biggest thing is, to be honest, right now, the Browns' situation isn't an appealing destination for free agents. And you know, that's why they're rebuilding their offensive line. They've spent a lot of money, and I agree with what they're doing to go get offensive linemen. And now the next step is weapons. And I really think the biggest question is, what do they have in Shedeur Sanders? You know, it's a polarizing topic. Believe me, there's 50% of the people that love him, and there's 50% of the people the other direction. And as he told me, he said it's really hatred for his dad. You know, his dad, Dion, was very polarizing. And so you saw a little bit of him last year, but not quite enough to say he's the answer. But on the other half, you didn't see enough to say, no, he's not the answer. He was 3-4. You can see he has the it factor. The biggest question is, what has he done this offseason to put himself in position to take the next step? Todd Monken, the new coach, was brought here to take the offense to another level. And that was the whole reason why Kevin Stefanski was fired. He was an offensive guy. In the last 2 years, the offense was 32nd and 31st in the NFL, scoring 15, 16 points a game. A high school team around here would outscore that. Wow. And so that's the question. If you're right here today, unless something happens drastically, nobody wants to hear this, but you're going to see Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson putting themselves on the field in this training camp, and one of those is going to come out and be the starter. Now, I believe it'll be Sanders. They're trying to build up the offense to put him in as the pilot, whoever they put in there, so they're better equipped. It would make the most sense to me to see what they actually have with him, because if you put Sanders or Watson in there, this is the last year of his contract, which seems like it's been forever. Then you've burned two guys, because Watson is not coming back. He's not going to do a favor to the Browns, even if he did well and they wanted him back. I don't think that's the case, right. But he is not going to come back and say, oh, you were so good to me and gave me so much money. He's going to go where he can get the most money. Sanders, if he doesn't play, you pretty much burn that bridge. So I think you're going to at least start the season with Sanders and see what you have there. That's all the indications I'm getting. Not that they're playing to lose, but they're really playing for the 27 off season to get the quarterback solved. Whether it's Sanders, if he proves to be the answer, it'd be like, you know, the best thing that could happen to him, because you spent a 5th-round pick for a guy that's making $800,000 a year. You know, when the average quarterback today is making 30, 40, 50 million. That allows you then next year, when Watson goes off the book, to really go get the answers. And if Sanders isn't the guy, they probably go 2-15. They'll have a chance to get the number 1 pick in the draft. I know there's a lot of talk already about Arch Manning. there's other quarterbacks, out there anticipated, or free agency or whatever. So I think if you were to ask me today, but that can change drastically. Something could come available and they make a trade, or they change their mind in the draft. But I don't see really, them in a position to go get the answer in the draft. So the way they've attacked the offseason so far is trying to build up the rest of the offense and seeing what you have in Sanders, for the reasons I mentioned there, because there's no upside in Deshaun Watson playing. But I warned them, and I've written this and I've said it on TV and on the radio, is that if they open it up to competition, Watson would probably win the competition, because I watched him 2 training camps at Greenbrier, and I thought he was really going to be good. In the first year, he hurt his shoulder, and then, the rest is history. But he looks really good in practice, and I have a feeling with a new coach, he's going to look really good. And then you put yourself in a really awkward position, in my opinion,
right,
because you got Sanders, who really isn't a backup quarterback, in my opinion. He's either the starter or you move on from him, because, believe me, the questions I got every day from fans about Sanders, if you wrote anything good, you got all kinds. If you wrote anything negative, it was just unbelievable. I've never seen, even with the Manziel years and even early with Watson, never saw so much interest in Shedeur Sanders, comparatively. It's a phenomenon that I can't even really explain.
Wow.
And do you feel that they've upgraded the line quite a bit in these signings?
That remains to be seen. I mean, they've spent a lot of money on it. They get this, they have to overpay, because, again, it's not a high destination where somebody that says, hey, I can go there and win the Super Bowl this year. And so they have to overpay. And I talked to 2 of them today, the Elton Jenkins they got from Green Bay and Zion Johnson they got from the Chargers, were both very high draft picks and have played well, but they weren't rated as the highest. Or for guys in that position, the Browns paid more than what the going rate was. And they both are excited, feel like the Browns have an up-and-coming team, and that could be true. If they can add a draft class this year like they added last year, they will be in great shape,
But not this year. So as a season ticket holder, Fred, I shouldn't be hoping for a Super Bowl this year?
Well, I'll answer it this way. The Browns were 3-12, and they played the Bengals, or the Steelers and the Bengals. They would have lost those 2 games, they'd be sitting there with the number 1 pick, and they would have Francisco Mendoza. But because they beat the Steelers and the Bengals, everybody felt good for a few weeks. Did that do them any good? Not really. Right. They went 5-12, and Kevin Stefanski kind of stuck it to him on his way out the door, because you drop from the 1 pick to the 6th pick, which is, especially in a 1 quarterback draft, isn't good. But no, to answer your question, they have one of the easiest schedules on paper in a long time. There's only 3 teams on their schedule next year that had winning records. I mean, it is a very favorable schedule. The schedule this year was terrible. And in the NFL, anything can happen. And so if they have adequate quarterback play, I think you could win 7, 8, 9 games. And I think you could win the division. In the AFC North, 3 of the 4 teams have new coaches.
Wow.
The Ravens moved on from their coach. The Steelers coach decided to move on, and the Browns. The Bengals, who would believe they were the most stable right now? So when you ask me that, from that aspect, this is a very winnable division. You could win the division at 9-8 and make the playoffs with that schedule. I mean, if you look at it, it's never the same as what it is now. But right now, based on the records from last year, only 3 teams made the playoffs, and one of them was the Steelers. And they weren't really that good. The Browns beat them. And so what I'm saying is anything can happen. It's set up for parity.
Right.
But they have to get the offense on track. This defense can beat anybody, but the offense didn't score but 15, 16 points, and you're not going to win a game in the NFL. So, no, the bright side of that equation is yes. If Shedeur Sanders is the answer, or they go with Deshaun Watson, he actually plays well, yeah, they could win. But then as far as the future, I don't know. But I don't think Todd Monken, he got the job at 60s, first chance. He is not going to lay down and hope they lose so next year they can win, because I've watched this for many years. Now, Jimmy Haslam's got a little more patient, but I've seen a lot of one and done that they've hired. Rob Chudzinski, 5-year contract, 1 year, fired. He got paid for 4 more years. I mean, most people say, well, gee, Fred, who would want to take a job with the Browns? I said, I would. You work a year and you get paid multi-million dollars for 4 or 5 more years. So, yeah, I think they have a winning defense. It's what they do on offense. That's why they were willing to part, and I disagreed with it at the time, to let Jim Schwartz go or fire him, or basically by not promoting him. You took a big risk on defense. Just because you have everybody back doesn't mean the coach coming in is going to run it the same way and they're going to play the way Schwartz really unlocked a lot of players on defense. Myles Garrett took it to a new level under him. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah did. Fortunately, he got hurt. Carson Schlesinger. I mean, you can go right down the list. That's not all because of the players, because the coach really unlocked it. I like the guy they got, but they took a big risk by firing basically Schwartz, by not promoting him to head coach. So Monken wants to win. He's not going to go out there and say, hey, let's just lose so we can be 3-14 and get a quarterback. And so he knows this. I look at him as Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians didn't get hired till he was 60, and then he won a Super Bowl, and he went to playoffs, I think 6 out of 9 years, and was really good. Very similar situation to Monken. So we'll see, but I know that very motivated, to win. And so with the schedule, I think anything's realistic. I mean, you look at the losses last year, if the offense would have scored 6 more points, I don't know how many games it was, but they would have made the playoffs, You can think right off the top, how many games did they lose because of special teams?
Right.
Kick returns and punt returns. You're 5-12. You win 4 more games. You're 9-8.
That's a big difference.
And I can think of those right off the top of my head. I mean, the Vikings game, they led an 80-some-yard drive by Carson Wentz, and those punt returns to end games. And so, yeah, I'm not trying to be the negative guy, but I'm just trying to say, until they get the quarterback situation settled, they're never going to be a perennial playoff team. Any team you talk about that's going to be a chance to win the Super Bowl, you start with the quarterbacks that they have. And so that's really, to be honest, the Browns have been looking for a franchise quarterback since Bernie Kosar. I mean,
they have.
They had
Any chance on him coming back?
Yeah. He's
Getting healthy.
doing better, but he's recovering from a liver transplant.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just the age-old problem. You just see it over and over and over, and you just really got to solve the problem. That's why, no defense to the Browns, but that's why they were so desperate and why they were willing to take on Deshaun Watson. Not too many franchise quarterbacks become available when they're 26, 27 years old that just led the NFL in passing. That's why they were willing to do that, because it's just been an endless cycle over and over, the same thing happening.
Fred, how long have you been part of the Browns?
Long time. Not part of the Browns. I mean, I was at one time. I worked actually for Art Modell when I got started, but I was covering the team. I started as an intern in 1981. I was finishing my degree at Kent State. I was getting my master's in sports administration, and I was hired to be an intern, one of 4. And my internship was training camp of 81. If anybody follows the Browns' history, that was coming off Red Right 88 when Brian Sipe was the MVP. And back then, there was no limit for practices. Everything was open. And no lie, we had 10 to 12,000 people at Kent State every day watching practice. And the security then was me and my 3 intern buddies. We had little ropes and we were trying to keep people off the field. It was, I've been down there all these years. I can't even get in the facility without check my fingerprint, my retina scan.
Wow.
It is, and I'm like, I know everybody there. It's unbelievable. But anyway, that was back then. A lot of stories on that, not to get on a rabbit trail, but I'll tell you one. Brian Sipe. He was so popular then that the Browns actually stayed in the dorm. I stayed in the dorm, and Dix Field, where Kent State, where they practiced, was about a 2-mile drive down the road. And he had so much trouble even getting out of his car that they assigned me to drive with him every day from the dorm to the field. And I let him out at the back entrance, and then I went around to the parking lot and got to know Sipe very well. One of the first days he had a book, Dare to Discipline by Dobson.
Yeah.
And we got talking, had a lot of good discussions. He's since come to know the Lord.
Oh, that's good to hear.
But anyway, one day I dropped him off, went all the way around, dropped everybody, they knew his car, so everybody's flying to the car, and I get out, and I heard a big groan. Oh, it's not Sipe, it's Dino Hall. Now, he was a kick returner that was about my size.
Yep. Yeah.
And, they all said, we'll get your autograph, Dino. Oh, I'm not Dino, or whatever. But there's some kid that's got my autograph on that. But,
regardless, to be identified as a NFL football player is pretty cool, Fred. I'll take it.
And so I had countless stories like that, over the years. But as far as, internship was over. During the summer, Art Modell started a tabloid magazine called Browns News Illustrated. And when my internship was over, they actually hired me to be a writer. I had never written anything in my life official other than I went to Cedarville University and I was a sports writer basically to cover the baseball team because I was a baseball player to make sure something was in there. But so that was my only, I didn't have any training really in it, but I wrote when my internship was over, I had written a couple stories during the time I was there just as a volunteer, and they published them. And when I wrote, I picked out a guy. They said, write some that will send them back to their hometown. It was a linebacker. He looked like a player to me, but nobody was talking to him. He was the last round pick. His name was Eddie Johnson. And he turned out to be a 10-time a Pro Bowl linebacker with the Browns in 10 years. And he always told me, man, you wrote the first story about me. I went back to Louisville where he played. And anyway, the Browns hired me to write for Browns News Illustrated the first couple years, part-time. And I had really went to school to get my master's because I wanted to coach college baseball. And I got an offer in Phoenix, Arizona to coach out there, and I went out there for 8 years.
Wow.
And in '89, I came back to Ohio, had got out of coaching, and moved back here to take a job to be the editor of Browns News Illustrated. And so that's how I came back here. And then since then, the Browns had sold it to Bernie Kosar, actually.
Wow.
And so I did that until the Browns moved to Baltimore. And in '95, after they moved, they came back in '99, and I actually was the writer for ClevelandBrowns.com. The internet had just started up, and I was their writer for the first 3 years, and then I went over to Orange and Brown Report, OBR.com, and I've been doing that since 2002. So
Wow.
add that all up, it's over 35 years
Wow.
that I've been covering the team. Now I'm on WTAM, the AM 1100, the Guardians and the Cavs station. I'm their analyst, and this past year I started working with Channel 19.
Wow.
They have a show called Off the Leash. It's a podcast, and it's broadcast on their website, but also they have just done an agreement with Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cavs, is going to start broadcasting his games on Rock Entertainment, which is his TV station, and so Channel 19's partnering with that. So that show I'm doing is going on that. Right now, I don't get it at my place. It's on Spectrum or different
Okay.
places, but I'll be doing the draft with Channel 19 the first night there. So I do a little TV, a little radio, and writing and stuff like that.
good.
So I've been doing it all quite a while. I keep hanging around, figuring one of these days Browns will be good. And I know how good it was in the 80s.
They were good.
You know,
Yeah.
people still living off the interest of the 80s, you know, with the Browns. I did cover the Cavs the 4 years. We when LeBron was here and they won the championship, and I was at that parade. There was 1 million people there, and I said, man, if the Browns ever were to do this, it'd probably be 10 million.
Yes, there
Because
would be.
Yeah.
I was in Phoenix for 8-9 years, and I don't think a day went by I didn't see a Browns sticker on some car. People move from Cleveland, but they never give up on the Browns or the Indians or the Cavs
No.
or whatever. So, you know, it's kind of in a nutshell how I got, you know, up to date.
Well, I was reading your articles. I was in Bible college in '82,
Oh, wow.
and my mom got me a subscription to Browns News Illustrated, and I read it from cover to cover. So I've been reading your articles, Fred.
Well, I appreciate that. We had like 50,000 subscribers, if you can believe that, at one time, and there was no internet. And so what was Browns backers were all over the place. We had a group in Southern California. We had 5,000, you know, members of that group out there, and I would go all over the country kind of. I would speak and bring players with me, but sell subscriptions. And, you know, you just couldn't believe that. But that, if you were like most of them, they sent it third class. And so the people in California said, I would get my preview for the game that was played on Sunday, on the Monday after the game. But they said they didn't care that it was outdated because it was like a lifeline.
Oh, yeah, it was
Yeah.
huge.
Browns
If I remember right, there was
product.
always a poster of a player.
Yep.
Jerry Shirk was doing some photography for the Browns, and
Yep.
so those
Yeah, I had
lined the
them all.
walls of my dorm.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
that
brings back
was-
some good memories.
Yeah, it was. I got to know quite a few people because you were on the phone. Mel Kiper was just getting started, and so he was advertising in our thing, and he would call me every week. Could you talk about, you know, my draft book, you know? And it was just. It
Oh,
was
that's
all
pretty
the time.
neat.
You had
That is
stories
neat.
like that.
That's
and you're
pretty
like,
neat.
Probably another thing made me think of when Bill Belichick was hired to be the head coach. You know, this is the 11th head coach I've covered, you know, and Belichick was the second. And because Sam Martigliano was the head coach when I was here, Marty took over when I was in Arizona. I came back when Bud Carson was hired, and then Bill Belichick was the second one. And when Belichick was here, I had a really good relationship with him, had several stories, but I never thought the guy was going to be anything when he left here. I remember Casey Coleman really liked him, and Casey Coleman used to be on Channel 8, was the radio guy. And Casey loved me to do his stats. And so he got Belichick to let me go on the plane with the radio people so I could do his stats for him. And I get a letter, and I can still see it. It was in red ink. It was one of those spiral that you tear and all that, and it was printed, and the whole thing was explaining why they didn't have room on the plane to take me that week to Dallas because they were taking all the advertisers and the bigwigs, and it was from Bill Belichick. And I'm like, now I know why he wasn't successful. He was it had to take him at least 10 minutes to write that letter to me, but I cannot find that. And I know I didn't throw it away, but I'm like, then he goes on and wins 6 Super Bowls, and I'm thinking, you know, whatever. But Yeah, a lot of different things we've seen, you know.
Any favorite players that just really stuck out?
Well, the favorites to me was in the early days. I used to get to know the guys personally and invite them to come over to go hunting or fishing and stuff like that, because I lived out here in the country. And I had Anthony Pleasant come over and Tommy Vardell, and Brant Boyer he's a special teams coordinator with the 49ers now, but he was probably the closest that I got, and we got on hunting trips and stuff. But I've always been close with Bernie. Like him a lot. I hosted a show with him with Mike Trevisano for 7 years, and Josh Cribbs, some guys like that, got to know. A lot of guys have good relationships with.
Trevisano the same off the air as he was on the air?
No, not really. He's like, it's all show business, man. You know, he learned that. He wasn't at all, you know what, I didn't really like him until he hired me. Then
you liked them.
Then it was like, and that was a story in itself. I was filling in for somebody, and a guy didn't show up, and they said, hey, could you come on here for a few minutes? And I was driving home, and I heard on the radio he's saying, you know that Fred guy that was just here, you know, he's going to be on every week, right? We want him, you know, and
that's
his
pretty
producer,
neat.
Carmen, said, yeah, he is. Well, then he called me, and I said, I heard that. But it was over a take I made on Baker Mayfield, and he goes, he was speechless. He was like, I've never heard anybody break that down like that.
You know, we're running out of time, Fred. But the good news is that you're going to have another session in another half hour session with us. So I know a lot of you.
Much?
No, you're doing great. I know you who are watching. We just want to let you know that God is in a lot of different things. Is that right, Fred? You can be in the grounds, you can be an announcer, you can be a writer. Doesn't matter what it is that we allow Jesus Christ in our lives. And that's the reason we wanted Fred here, is that he does have a good testimony for Jesus. And we're going to talk about that in the next half hour, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
And this is the first time, we just want to let you know that he's a man that he's compassionate about the Browns. I mean, he's made a big difference in the writing world and for us to know more about the Browns, and we appreciate that. And so, until next time, I want to just let you know, if you know Jesus Christ, it doesn't matter what we do. The most important thing is that we know him and we live for him in everything we do, amen?
Absolutely.
So, until next time, we want you to be an overcomer in Christ.